Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's 3:33 p.m. I'm calling this meeting of the Maple Broadband Executive Committee to order for the 27th of April, 2026. The first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve as distributed.
So moved.
Okay, looks like a second from Nancy. Anyone like to make any changes to the agenda? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Okay, we have an agenda. Next up is approval of the minutes from April 8th. The April 20th ones only came through earlier today, so I didn't send them along in a fire drill format. We will get those approved along with this week's minutes the next time we meet on the 11th. So I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from April 8th.
So moved.
Okay, can I get a second? Was that a second from Nancy? Okay. Any edits or changes to the minutes? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Okay, minutes have been approved. Public comments. Would anyone like to make a public comment at this time? Okay, hearing none, chair report.
I'll waive my chair report. I was going to share with everyone kind of an update about Ripton, but we also have that on the agenda under 10D, so we can cover it then, and then Zapata will be able to watch the Ripton update too, so all the better. So that's it for my chair report.
Okay, that's great. I'm sure Zapata will enjoy watching the Ripton update. Okay, so the executive director report, what I've been busy with the last little bit has been continued work on the audit, and we have a finance committee update later on the agenda. But I will give a highlight right now, which is to announce that I distributed the audit RFP earlier today. That was one of the items that we reviewed and signed off in the finance committee. So that's good. We have a pretty chilled time frame in this one. I think we're looking for selection in July, so giving people lots of time to respond. I've been doing some work as well on the network management agreement, as you'll see updated in the parking lot, and I can take questions on that if you guys have them, but that's been taking some time and attention. And lots of work on the affordable drop program, working with Steve, getting Alex onboarded, and also working on the outbound, trying to get the outbound calling and door-to-door canvassing spun up, because as of today, we still only have 13 people that are registered. So we need to make sure that we actually have the demand to be able to support this grant program. So that's been a big priority. It's getting the ability to deliver on the 13 that we have, but also getting more in the pipeline. And then part of that as well has been the JSI drop design prioritization. So we talked before and we voted in this committee to authorize expenditure for JSI to be doing designs for the drops that have not yet been scouted by WCBT. And in order to be able to, number one, save that time in terms of getting customers installed, but also as it relates to the affordable drop program, to be able to get out ahead of that a little bit. So to be able to have more resources available to be doing the scouting and the design of the drops as we start to get more interest in the program. So I gave them initial lists. They're going to be starting up in the Ferrisburg areas where we're going to be doing the canvassing, and specifically starting in the serving areas that have the highest proportion of buried drops, but we're not sending them to just do buried drops and later go back and do aerial drops. So they will be working as efficiently as they can, and part of the coordination that we may be doing under the affordable drop program is asking them to be a little bit inefficient in order to be able to do the designs for people that express interest if they're not on their list. And then, so Lucas is the Vacuda GIS engineer. He was traveling last week, but I did a ton of work with him the previous week getting these lists done. And part of that as well is getting a list of mailing addresses for London Middlebury to send out physical mailers, as well as addresses for the door-to-door canvassing, so that we're having the people who are, or the person who's going to be going door-to-door canvassing for the affordable drop, knocking on the right doors and not the wrong doors. So that was a lot of work the week before last. And then this week, Lucas's big focus is helping us get the submission for BEAD to split our project into 4 separate NEPA project areas. So the addresses and then the line work associated with that. So I have to give a shout out to the VCBB's consultant that actually reached out proactively to ask us what was going on and when we'd be submitting that. So I explained to them, apologized for not being more responsive, and explained to them what was going on, but that we would have that submission ready for them this week. So what's up next is financial model updates. So as you all know, we have our annual governing board meeting on the 12th of May. And one of the things that is under our financial policies and procedures is that we update our financial model twice annually. And this is one of the meetings where that is due. So I've been working on that. And I have the information from Darlene. I need to do the quarterly asset capitalization. So that is also planned. And then obviously BEAD, talked about NEPA earlier, as well as starting to read and understand program rules and guidance, specifically as it relates to procurement and management of assets and the tracking that's going to be required to demonstrate that the assets we've paid for, the materials we've paid for with the program are used, are BABA compliant and are used in BEAD areas and not in other areas. So there is a whole lot of work to be done there. And my concern is I don't want us to have a whole bunch of materials before we actually have the right understanding of how we need to be treating and handling those materials and what are all the checkoffs that are required as they go from person to person to person. So that's obviously pretty important. And then finally supporting any closeout and construction. So this is of our construction grant. So Luck Grove began its physical plant inspection last week. I've heard a whole lot of nothing, but I am ready to support in case we actually hear something. And then there's some additional written deliverables for VCBB that I'm working on submitting. So that is basically what I'm busy with right now. Anyone have any questions?
What do you do in your spare time?
Sleep. Mow the lawn. That's happening later today. Okay, so moving on, we have a bid opening. Steve issued a fiber cable RFQ, and so we're doing a bid opening for that next. Steve, can I turn over to you?
Sure. So we issued invitations. We traditionally have a stable, we'll call them up, 3 bidders. And the RFQ went out to those 3. And then kind of out of the blue, we received a bid from a 4th party. And we do post our RFQ on our website as part of our obligations, statutory obligations. So that was the way it all started. And we have received bids from 2 of our 3 normal distributors. And we also received a bid from this one that came out of the blue. So in terms of details, the 3 normal distributors that we send RFPs out to is Wesco, Graybar, and Power and Tel. And we received that 4th kind of on a left field one from Airway Technologies. So I'll kind of walk you through what we've received. So for Wesco, we received no bid. They were notified that if they wanted to send it late, we might consider it. But I think at this point, it's too late for them because we're going to do the formal opening right now. Graybar submitted a quote for from manufacturer Litera, which was previously OFS, over optical fiber systems. The BABA total 363,140, 363,140 for non-BABA cable, 146,496, and 146,496 for a total grand total of 509,636, $509,636. Airway Technologies submitted a proposal for Corning, and so far in the life of Maple Broadband, we've never gotten a Corning quote, and maybe this detail will explain it. The lead time that I will talk about lead times after. BABA total 496,600, $496,600. Non-BABA 223,200, 223,200. Grand total 719,800. Power and Tel was the final bidder. They're proposing Prysmian cable. We've actually purchased Prysmian cable from Power and Tel in the past and have been satisfied with it. BABA total 334,584, 334,584. Non-BABA 133,548. and the grand total of 468,132. So I kind of ran through that fast, but the long and the short of it is that Power and Tel did come in low. Interesting is that the Airway Technologies and Corning proposal not only was the high, but it was also non-compliant. I noted in my preliminary effort. Lead times, respectively, from the three bidders that we received quotes on, Power and Tel, September or October, which is about 6 months, 6+ months. Airway for their Corning product is saying 30 weeks, which is about the same. And Graybar is claiming 16 to 18 weeks. So that's kind of the long and the short of it. I guess I'm going to make a proposal that we issue a purchase order to Power and Tel subject to further bid leveling that Ellie and I will want to do. Is there a second? We got a second from Nancy. Discussion?
I have a question on that. Is that for the bead or the non-bead?
Overall, in aggregate, they're the low bidders. Power and Tel is. And non-BABA of the three, they're the low bidder. And for BABA, they are the low bidder. So in aggregate or individually, they're all low bidder.
Well, the reason I'm
think-
asking, sorry. The reason I'm asking is that the executive committee's purchasing threshold is 250,000 according to the current policy, and we have something later on to change that to 350,000. But I think that the total of everything is going to push us above the 350,000. So you would probably wish to have that be for the non-BABA, which is under 250,000, and then the bead cable will be for the governing board when it meets in May.
Well, why don't we defer the whole thing to the governing board? Get it all done at once.
Or do it separately.
Well,
That is, do the BABA and non-BABA separately.
that was the suggestion, do the BABA and the non-BABA separately, because the
Right.
lead times are a concern, and the non-BABA, some of it may be related to ARPA that needs to get spent and built by the 30th of September of this year, and some of it may not, because I think that entire bill of materials, I think quite a lot of it had to do with the bead middle mile, but there might be more time pressure on that.
So I guess I missed something, Ellie. So 330, the BABA quote from Power and Tel at 334,584, the executive committee can approve that.
If after the policy adoption, although I'm not sure. I'm not
Okay.
because I mean the total of these two is over 500,000. So I don't know. I wouldn't want to be the one interpreting the policy of two separate transactions, each under 250 or each under 350.
We're meeting the governing board in about 2 weeks now, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, how does everyone feel about it? Do we want to break it up and proceed from there, or do we want to defer it to out 2 weeks and present it to the governing board?
I think in terms of transparency, it's probably better if we defer and get them all to the governing board at the same time.
Or a compromise could be that we issue the purchase orders now because you can cancel them up until they ship, and they're not shipping in 2 weeks.
That's true. That would be good.
So maybe that would be part of the motion.
Well, so my question is, wait, is there any benefit to, because this one has a longer lead time than the other one, where it said 16 to 18 weeks as opposed to like 30 weeks or 6 months. So is there any need to bring in materials for one portion of this project under certain funding mechanisms sooner rather than later, where that lead time, it might benefit us to actually separate out who we're purchasing what from, or from who?
A good question. From my perspective, the question really is, when are we going to need the cable?
Right.
And I think that my best guess is that we're not going to be doing installation until September or October. So I think we're fine. There's a lot more work to do before we can do the construction. So, with BEAD still pending and just so many open things, I think I'm less concerned about that. And if we have to wait a month or something like that because we get everything sorted out early, I guess I can think of worst cases. But
Yeah, I mean, the thing that concerns me a little bit is, as we know, we need to spend the ARPA money this year, and it was further clarified by the VCBB in the Vacuda meeting that ARPA SLFRF actually needs to be spent by the 30th of September. And we have an executive session later to talk about some options of what to do there. And I didn't look at this RFQ with that particular question in mind, but off the top of my head, I'm reasonably certain that most or hopefully all of what we'd be looking to build with ARPA the remainder of this year would be the 24 count, but there could be some exceptions. So we might wind up with a case where a couple of weeks does make a difference for the ARPA spending. So we might want to defer actually pulling the trigger until we're quite certain where all the cable that we're going to be using is going to be coming from, and if we might need any 72.
yeah, the report we received from JSI on 24, it looked like we're still going to have 300,000 feet of cable left over at the end of the project, one way or the other.
Right. So that's not the question. The question is whether some of what we want to build with ARPA this year is going to require something that we don't have enough of in stock and that we would need to be receiving under this order, which is an analysis that I haven't done, at least.
Well, do we have time for you to do that analysis, before we make a decision?
Well, I think we have our quorum here. I think the best way to do this is to us to agree on something now, and that if it necessitates some time doing some preparation work, figuring out what's going to be needed and when, we could say we're going to approve it to do to award the entirety of the project to Power and Tel, pending further review by Ellie and Steve, which will be further presented to the governing board, something to that effect, so we can get it approved, get it off our desk, and then worst case, we either pull the trigger before the governing board meeting or we have sufficient closure that we can make an informed decision. I think I made a motion. I'm going to withdraw my motion. And so let me just make a straw man motion here and we'll see where it goes. So I move that we approve awarding the entirety of the project to Power and Tel, subject to further review by Ellie and Steve, which may involve breaking up awarding the RFQ, and in which case, regardless, we present it in front of the governing board for final approval. Don't ask me to say that again. Is there a second?
That I would second.
Okay.
But you have to repeat it in order to second it.
Luckily, it's being
Play
recorded.
back the tape.
So in terms of the concept, what do you guys think? Does that seem like, I think the idea is
That makes the most sense.
approve something, do more research, maybe proceed before the governing board, or if Ellie and I think we need to pull the governing board in, then at that point we'll present it in front of the governing board and give them some good granular data. Is that what you're thinking, Ellie? Does that work for you too?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, my main point was just to ensure that when we're looking at bringing in wire and the materials that we need, that we're working backwards from some of these funding mechanisms or obligations to ensure that we have enough wire at the right time to finish and close out those obligations, so we don't put that funding at risk.
Yep. That's good. Actually, well put too, Zapata, because to Ellie's point, ARPA, we have to spend on ARPA now, and part of the bid does involve some cable for the ARPA project, just one strand count. So we could today approve that one because it's only, it's not only, but it's $133,548. We can
Oh, if
issue
only
the,
I had that.
I
yeah,
know, right?
and so it gets issued now. And it's the one that we're worried about, making sure we have what we need. I think the only other thing we can do is award to somebody with a shorter lead time. That's kind of, I think it's a bad idea, but the good lead time is Gray Bar with a price of $146,496, 130, 140, about $10,000 more.
If you guys don't mind, I'd like to suggest that you take a vote on the motion on the floor because we have quite a lot of other things to discuss later
Yeah.
on, including an executive session
Yeah.
where I want to talk about my recommendations around spending the rest of the ARPA money or get your
Yeah.
feedback on that.
All the more, okay. So all in favor of my motion, raise your hand or say aye.
Okay. That's all
Thank
of you.
you.
Great. All right. Okay, so moving on to section 7, calls for decision and key discussions. So the first item there is the conflict of interest policy. Shannon, can I turn that over to you to present?
Sure. Let me pull up and share screen 2. Okay, this is basically unchanged. Are you able to see it? Just to make sure. Okay. This is unchanged from the last time we spoke about it. And essentially at that meeting we said, well, let's give everybody a chance to weigh in if they so desire. And the only conversation I had was with Steve over the weekend about some of the citations in it. And so if everybody else is fine with it and having heard nothing else, I'm assuming that, then we're good to go with it. I guess the only question is if we want to only include this page, section 8, with the agreement for executive committee members and for us to get that back. So we're on record as agreeing with it. And for everybody else, they just get the first 3 pages. And then the other piece, based on Zapata saying, hey, I'd like to see what's simplified. I ran it through Copilot and came up with this 1-pager. That was also in your packet. So really, it's pretty cut and dried, pretty simple. It came from, part of it was the one that we have in force now. Part of it was taking Addison County Regional Planning Commissions. And then part of it was just me trying to synthesize that and simplify it.
What's your preference, Shannon?
I would say I would move that we adopt the draft policy, the 4-pager, and only require agreement at the executive committee level.
The signatures there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll second that. A discussion. Okay, I like this. All in favor of proceeding with this version? Raise your hand or say aye.
There you go.
Thank you, sir.
Stop sharing.
Thanks, Shannon.
Oh,
Go ahead,
Lynn.
Lynn.
So I'm not a voting member, but I'm on the executive committee member. So do I have to sign this or not? And if you don't have an answer, you can research it and let me know.
I actually do have an answer, because in it we define that you would still be a member. So yes, as would Ellie.
Mm-hmm. And what about Adam?
Yes.
He's our clerk.
Okay.
He's an officer.
You have
All
to
right.
sign it twice.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda then is procurement policy. And oops, I restarted my computer and my office updated, so let me get that up.
It's called a purchasing policy. It's not called a procurement policy.
Sorry, purchasing policy. I apologize.
I've got it here for you. Oh, you got it. Okay.
Yep. So the changes made to this policy were mainly because the Federal Acquisition Register, I think it is, the FAR, was updated last fall to increase the amount of, basically to increase the threshold for purchasing under the different categories as a result of inflation and other supply chain increases. So that happens periodically. So this is mainly, there's two main changes to this. One is updating the thresholds to be in alignment with that, and the other is there was this policy was sometimes very specific around construction and things like Davis-Bacon and so on. And we actually don't want that. So I put in wording that essentially says that we will be in compliance with the terms of our grant and any upstream requirements of that or the funding source. Because sometimes, like the Affordable Drop Program is a good example, it specifically excludes Davis-Bacon. So we want to make sure that our policy doesn't require us to do something which is actually in conflict with our grant. So that was the intent of that wording, is rather than having specific wording that might be in conflict and in the best case would be duplicative of what's in the grant, that essentially the source of truth is the grant and the upstream requirements of that. So those are the two changes. And Shannon, I sent it to Shannon for feedback. Shannon had basically asked me some of the things I've just talked about now. I don't know if there's anything you want to say, Shannon, that you flagged in your review.
No, I mean the only things that I flagged was I could clearly see the correlation between the increased dollar volumes in the FAR and what you're outlining here. And then I just had questions about what you just talked about, tying our hands with things that we didn't need to. But otherwise, I thought it was great and pretty clear.
Yep. Oh, the one other thing, this is minor, is I renamed incidental purchases to micro purchases because that's what the FAR called them, and it just confused the heck out of me that we're using a different term for the same thing.
And then the only other thing was a non-substantive, the footer, getting the page numbers on the footers correct.
Yeah, I don't know what Word is doing there. I'm going to have to cut and paste into a new document after this is approved.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes from like page 4 to page 1, and I really don't know why.
I might be able to fix that for you.
Yeah, there's one wordsmithing item that needs attention. It's Appendix A. You're on it right now. It's the one that's highlighted there. We have requirements required. We got to probably fix that. We shouldn't have requirements, should we?
Requirements required, where is it?
In the middle, the one that's in red, text in red.
Any requirements required by the funding. So this was trying to talk about, or maybe any requirements specified by the funding source.
Yeah, that's
You
fine.
could say mandated. I don't, I just don't like the idea of putting the same word, the same word, two in a row.
Yeah. That's better.
Thank you.
Happy friendly amendment. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve this revised policy as amended.
Also, I have one question. This will be the first time that I've seen this, so not sure how it was originally drafted, but the procurement types and requirements, those discretionary, micro, and minor, are those threshold and ranges dictated by the FAR?
Yep.
So my question to you, this comes back to, please don't let's go back into the document next year and have to update accordingly. Can we just reference that the micro purchases will meet the requirements of FAR as defined? That we don't need to keep updating these numbers as FAR keeps updating, kind of like when we reference a statute, then that's the definition that we're following, say for sexual harassment or something, or is there more reason behind spelling it out?
Well, I thought about that, and I specifically chose not to do that because this is the sort of thing that we reference all the time, and
Okay.
and the FAR doesn't change that frequently, and it's probably not a bad thing to go through an exercise like this of making, because there's nothing that requires us to be in alignment with the FAR. So I
Okay.
actually think it's a good thing for us to choose, do we still wish to be in alignment? I mean, if the FAR updates in 6 months to be $6 million for micro purchases, we may not want to just automatically, I mean, who knows, right? if we always want to be in line with what the federal government does. So that was my thinking, but I'm
Okay.
not religious about it.
Great. No, that was the explanation I was looking for. Like, what was the rationale behind it? So you can make a motion accordingly.
Okay, well, I can't make a motion. I'll entertain a motion to approve this with Steve's friendly amendment, as distributed with that friendly amendment. Nancy? Okay, can I get a second? Sai? All right, any other comments? Changes? Hearing none? Raise your hand or say aye to approve the motion on the floor. Okay, great, thank you. I will update that and make sure the page numbers are accurate in doing so. Okay,
And
so
the
it's two
date,
things
and
to
the
update
dates
today.
at the dates at the very beginning too.
Yes, the dates at the very beginning. It was approved today. Okay, so moving on, affordable drop program. So I teed this up in my email. So as of now, 4:03 p.m., let me just check my email to make sure this is still an accurate statement. We have not received a grant agreement for the affordable drop program. So just being that that's the case, I am of the opinion that the grant agreement is forthcoming. NEKCV got theirs this morning, and they had there was an error on it that was corrected. So I am of the opinion this thing is imminent. That said, I don't really want to wait another 2 weeks to have the grant agreement, and I think that we should have a vote on the record talking about our decision making. Steve, go ahead.
Did you talk to NEK about the contents of the document, the agreement? Because if they take exception to it, we will too. Are they okay with it?
They were okay with it. There was a problem with the order of preference that accidentally made the thing into a non-fixed amount subaward, but that's been corrected.
Good.
Clerical
Great.
error. Yeah.
That's
So-
huge. That's huge.
Yeah, because the scope of work we went through with staff several months ago, and so the things that we are unclear on are the grant agreement itself. And NEKCV, because this would be our first ARPA capital project. Everything else we've been dealing with is ARPA SLFRF. And so they are slightly different programs. I've never had an ARPA capital projects grant that I've had to work with. So NEKCV did, as well as Reconnect. So I think for them it was a little bit more straightforward, but it's not so much a question. I mean, the terms are what they are. We just need to we need to wait for it. So what I suggested on emails is two separate things. The first one, that we authorize beginning construction in anticipation of receiving a grant. And again, hopefully we'll have the grant before we actually kick off construction. And then the second one is authorize executing a construction agreement with Eustis.
I like it. Yeah. I move that we kick off construction as early as possible and engage in agreement. We execute an agreement with Eustis to perform the construction work. Is there a second? Thanks, Nancy. We have a second. Discussion.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I'm clear, because there seems to be two different programs that are happening. Well, maybe even three. ARPA stuff is still moving forward, and granted, you're going to have some recommendations about what that might look like too. Then we have the BEAD recipients, which we're not allowed to do anything with up until, and now with the new processes in motion, that's going to be delayed. So what phase of this am I agreeing to approve?
Okay, so the VCB's program is called the Affordable Long Drop Program. That is funded with ARPA capital projects.
Okay.
So this is ARPA. It's a new ARPA funded grant essentially. So it's not related to any of the current things, but it is subject to those same rules of needs to be spent substantially complete and money spent by September 30th, 2026, which is one of the reasons we have been in such a under such pressure to do the outbound calling and canvassing to make sure that we actually have enough drops to be funding with this money by the deadline.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, and just so that we're having a conversation around what the implication is here, in the hopefully extremely unlikely event that the grant does not come through, there is an opportunity cost, which either means that we have to use other ARPA money to pay for this, or we have to pay for it out of our own coffers. And we don't have unlimited amounts of money sitting in the bank. So the risk is not zero. I don't believe it's high, but again, I think it's good to have a public vote on this so that you're not just taking my word for it, and that it's clear that there's been a discussion and deliberation, because we really shouldn't be sitting practically in May waiting for a grant agreement.
And is
guess
there
the other-
any minimum requirement for participation in order for that grant funding? Like you said, we only have 13 people currently signed up. Are we supposed to have a minimum threshold? I thought that we had put in an application indicating a certain number that we were going to be grant awarded. So if we don't meet that number, are we obligated to return the unused funds, or are we obligated to return the entirety of the grant? And that's also a risk?
Okay, that's a great question. So I actually, and again, I haven't seen the grant agreement. What I have is the scope of work and the milestones that was agreed with staff previously. And according to that, we essentially get 30% of it upon signature and public launch. So we will get 30% of the total award basically on day one, and that would cover the 13 drops we have. And then the remainder of it, the milestone percentages go down, but it's like every 25% of the drops is a milestone. So we will be obviously orienting ourselves towards hitting the first 25%, and then the second 25%, and then the third 25%, and then hopefully all of them.
What are
Great
we
question.
aiming for? What are we aiming for as far as takers?
168 total.
168.
And so assuming that the grant is awarded, which all signs indicate that it will be, then there won't be any financial risk because of low number of enrollment.
Right. If we were trying to install 50 people, that would be a different story. So really the risk is that the grant just completely falls through. We don't get that 30% milestone, which again, it's non-zero, just to be fair, until we actually have an executed agreement, we don't have an agreement, but I do believe it's coming. Steve?
Yeah, I think that there's no risk here, or very, very little risk, because let's say we say, let's do it, let's approve. Then Monday comes and goes. We haven't really done anything yet. We've been told that we can engage resources, but we really aren't going to necessarily engage them because we still don't have an agreement in hand or anything like that. So if a week or two goes by and we still haven't seen the grant, or if there's some defects in that grant document, Ellie will chase them down and get them sorted. And from my perspective, I can assure you, we're not gonna pull the trigger on this until those questions are answered. So I think worst case, we approve it today, and then Ellie says, hold on, we're not going to do it now, and here are the reasons, and then we reconvene and we figure out what the next step looks like.
Yep. And also the fact that NEKCB has their grant agreement means that I can presumably ask them to supply that under NDA and have a look at the upstream grant terms, which that was my big concern around executing something with Eustis, is I don't understand what are all the upstream requirements that we have to comply with, because don't have a grant, don't have a draft grant, and haven't ever had ARPA capital projects.
Did you copy what Christy used for her grant application? And if you didn't,
No,
then then the grant agreement to us could be different than the one that NEK has.
this has nothing to do with the scope of work. This has to do with the upstream requirements specific to ARPA capital projects. It's basically the legalese of the grant. I mean, either that or I don't, but I would rather know something about ARPA capital projects and what these grants have to say than nothing, or base it on what we've seen for ARPA SLFRF. Lynn?
They're not going to make it different for every recipient, I'm guessing.
No,
Right?
they wouldn't. The scope of work is what's unique, but the upstream grant terms relating, I mean, like Davis-Bacon is a great example that, for construction projects over $1 million, this one would be on the threshold, ARPA SLFRF requires Davis-Bacon, and ARPA capital projects doesn't. That was one of the questions that I asked. And so you don't want to put something in the Eustis agreement that's exactly wrong because you don't know what the ARPA CPF requirements are.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this?
Let's get going. We're going to lose Cy here, and she's not going to have an opportunity to be in those executive sessions at this rate. So let's go. All in favor? As proposed, raise your hand or say aye.
Great. All right. So the next item under section 7, and we can keep this to a hopefully pretty brief discussion, is around onboarding new board members. So our annual meeting is next month, and every year at the annual meeting, we do have a changeover of board members. We have new people coming on board, no pun intended. And it strikes me that we've never actually had a conversation around how we onboard new board members and give them the context that they need to do their jobs properly. And so I think that that is something that should be discussed certainly in this committee, potentially even at governing board level, that, you know, ideally there would be a little subcommittee that talks about governing board onboarding and puts together a packet to get people ready. So I wanted to raise that here for discussion. It's quite common on other nonprofit boards, and we've been around for a couple of years and have never done it. So I wanted to raise it. Cheat sheet of acronyms, great ideas, Apata. Yeah, when you hear Ellie talking, like, what the heck is she on about?
It's a great idea, Ellie. Somebody has to do it, though. Have to create the onboarding package. Do we have a volunteer on the executive committee who'd be willing to take a crack at it? It would just be a first pass, I'm sure, but we also should think about the fact that it would be nice to have it in hand for the annual meeting.
I can't commit to doing anything between now and then. So it
I
could be
can't either.
something I could develop in time for next year, but that's too tight.
Yeah, and actually, it could be a good thing to have to actually raise this at the next governing board meeting and ask for feedback of new board members to say, to be thinking over the next month or two, what are the things that weren't clear? Or even for other board members, okay, what are the things that Ellie's had to explain for 15 minutes that you've already heard 6 times that would be really helpful not to have to talk about in a public meeting?
Yeah.
So that could be a good way of doing it to help source the content kind of organically and then do it. But my point is that if we don't ever talk about doing it, it's never going to get done. And so this is as good a time as any to be gathering requirements for it because we have the annual meeting coming up.
I think that's a great suggestion, and it's asking the governing board for some input and then making sure that we just put it on the parking lot. And perhaps somebody on the governing board would also like to take a lead to do an initial draft. I mean, there's been a number that have been on the board for a while, and they might want to be more involved.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I mean, that would be my first prize. The executive committee already puts in a lot of time. It'd be great to have someone on the governing board take the lead with maybe one member from the executive committee and one new member, something like that. I mean, that would be wonderful. We'll see. But if that sounds like a plan, we could put that on the governing board agenda for the next meeting. Great. Okay. So the next item on the agenda then is proposed executive session to discuss personnel matters.
I move to find the premature public knowledge of Maple Broadband personnel discussions would place Maple Broadband at a substantial disadvantage if it was disclosed to the public. Is there a second? A second from Si. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Thanks, everyone. I move that we enter into executive session to discuss personnel issues under the provisions of Title I, Section 3131B of the Vermont statutes. Is there a second? I got a second from Si and Nancy. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Excellent. Thanks, everyone.
I'm going to stop the recording.